Can you believe your own twin sister could steal everything you built? I started $1 million tech company from nothing. Late nights, zero funding, pure grit. I trusted my identical twin, Ava, with everything because family first, right? Then one day I discovered she forged my signatures, secretly sold my shares, and took the entire company for herself. I lost it all. Broke, humiliated, betrayed by blood. But I didn't stay down. I went silent, planned in the shadows, and got the sweetest revenge. Today, she's paying the price, and I took it all back. This is my true story of heartbreak, betrayal, and epic comeback. 10 chapters of pure drama. Stick around till the end. You won't believe the justice. Hit play now. You're gonna be hooked. Picture this. You're 25 years old, scraping by in a dingy apartment where the walls seem to close in every night. But you've got this unshakable fire burning inside, a dream that refuses to die. That's where my story begins. My name's Alia. I grew up in a cramped house in a forgotten corner of suburbia, where money was always tight and hope felt like a luxury. My twin sister Ava and I were inseparable back then, mirror images with the same dark curls, same hazel eyes that lit up with mischief, same freckles across our noses. We shared everything, hand-me-down clothes, whispered secrets under the covers, even the bruises from playground falls. But while I chased wild ideas, Ava was the planner, always one step ahead with her sharp mind. I started EcoForge from absolute nothing. It was a tech startup building eco-friendly apps for small businesses, software that helped them cut waste and save green without the big bucks. I hammered out the first version on a beat-up laptop that crashed every hour, fueled by instant noodles and sheer willpower. I'd pitch to investors in coffee shops, heart racing, palms sweaty, only to hear, "Nice try, but come back when you're serious." Rejection stung, but I pushed on. Late nights turned into breakthroughs. Clients started signing up. By our third year, we had a real office, a team of 15 dedicated souls, and revenue climbing into the millions. EcoForge wasn't just a company. It was my soul poured into code and contracts, my escape from our chaotic childhood, proof that I could build something lasting. Ava was my anchor, or so I believed. She'd flunked out of business school but had a knack for numbers and legalese. Too rigid for me, she'd say with that knowing smirk. When the company grew, I needed help with the paperwork, shares, trusts, all that dry stuff that made my eyes glaze over. I trusted her completely. "You're the only one who gets it," I told her one evening over burgers at our old favorite diner. We were toasting to a major deal. I gave her full access, signatures, files, everything. She pulled me into a hug, her voice warm against my ear. "Twins stick together, Alia. I'll protect what you've built." I felt safe. Family doesn't betray, right? The hammer fell on an ordinary Wednesday morning. I was in the office, adrenaline pumping as I prepped for a pitch that could expand us coast to coast. My CFO, Sarah, burst in, face ashen. "Alia, sit down. This is bad." My chest tightened immediately, a cold dread creeping in. She laid out the papers, share transfers, trust revisions, sale confirmations. "Your controlling stake, it's been sold to anonymous buyers through a dummy corp. Signatures stared back. Mine, but not mine. Forged flawlessly. Dates when I'd been traveling. And the puppet master? Ava's hidden accounts." I raced to her upscale loft that night, the one she'd snapped up with investment wins. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, throat parched like I'd swallowed sand. She answered the door in a designer robe, cocktail in hand, eyebrows raised. "Ava," I rasped, thrusting the documents forward. "You forged my trust, sold my shares?" She scanned them casually, then met my eyes with a tilt of her head. That familiar face, my face, twisted into something smug. "Relax, sis. It's not theft, it's smart business. You were too busy playing visionary to see the leaks. I fixed it." Her tone was condescending, like scolding a kid. My vision swam. A lump formed in my throat. "But it's everything I have, my dream." She chuckled, low and cutting. "Your pet project? I turned it into gold. This is my share for propping you up all these years." "Propping me up?" The air went thick, silence stretching as stares from her fancy artwork judged me. Tears welled. I thought them, but my voice cracked. "We're twins, family." She shrugged, sipping her drink. "Exactly, and family takes care of each other. Sue if you want. Those forgeries, good luck proving it with our identical everything." I fled to my car, body quaking, sobs ripping from my core as I drove. That night, in my suddenly barren apartment, assets seized, debts mounting in my name, I hit the floor, curled tight, chest heaving. Humiliation burned hot. Powerless rage choked me. My own twin, the one who'd bandaged my cuts and shared my fears, had eviscerated me, left me with nothing but echoes of injustice, unanswered and raw. But the real agony? It was only deepening. The days after the discovery didn't just hurt, they bled. I'd wake up gasping, heart racing before my eyes even opened, like my body already knew the nightmare was real. My apartment, once cluttered with prototypes and sticky notes full of ideas, now felt like a tomb. Furniture gone, accounts empty. The fridge hummed louder than usual in the silence, mocking me with its half-eaten leftovers. I'd stare at my reflection, sunken cheeks, red-rimmed easel eyes, and barely recognize the woman looking back. That fire I'd carried for years, it flickered low, threatening to go out. EcoForge was slipping further away every hour. Ava had wasted no time. Through her shell company, she installed a new board that locked me out completely. Emails bounced, keycards deactivated. My own employees, people I'd mentored, celebrated birthdays with, were told I'd stepped away due to personal issues. Debts started piling up in my name. Vendor invoices, loans I'd never signed for, all tied to the forged documents. Collection agencies called nonstop. One voicemail still echoes in my head. "Miss Alia, this is urgent. Your account is severely delinquent." Delinquent, like I was some deadbeat, not the founder who'd built it from scratch. Shame became my constant shadow. I'd replay every moment I'd handed Ava more power. That dinner where I laughed and said, "You're the smart one with the details." The late nights when she'd help by organizing files while I coded. How many times had she smiled that twin smile while plotting? The internal voice was merciless. "You were blind, weak. You deserved this." I felt disposable, like a used-up prototype tossed aside once the real product launched. And Ava? She didn't just take my company, she danced on the grave. 2 weeks after the theft, she threw a lavish relaunch party for the new EcoForge. Invitations went out to everyone in our network, my network. Photos flooded social media. Ava in a sleek emerald gown, champagne flute raised, surrounded by my former team and investors. Her caption, "Grateful to lead this incredible vision into its next chapter. Some dreams need stronger hands to fly." Stronger hands. The comments poured in. Congratulations, heart emojis, people I'd known for years liking and sharing without a single question. A friend forwarded me a video from the event. I shouldn't have watched it, but I did, curled on the floor of my empty living room, phone screen glowing in the dark. There was Ava on stage, microphone in hand, voice smooth and confident. My sister had beautiful ideas, but ideas alone don't build empires. Sometimes you have to step in, make the hard calls, and carry the weight. I'm proud to do that now. The crowd applauded. Applauded! My chest caved in. I couldn't breathe. Hands shaking, I paused on her face, that smug little tilt of the head I'd seen in childhood photos when she'd won something I wanted. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. I called her that night. Stupid, I know, but I needed to hear something, anything that resembled remorse. She picked up on the third ring, music thumping in the background. "Alia," she drawled, amused, calling to congratulate me. "How could you do this?" My voice cracked immediately. That was my life, everything I worked for. A long pause, then a sigh, like I was inconveniencing her. "Honestly, you're being so dramatic. You were spread too thin, always chasing the next shiny idea while the business bled. I saved it. You should be thanking me." "Thanking you?" The words tasted like acid. "You forged my name. You stole from your own sister." Another laugh, sharp this time. Stole? Please, I restructured. And let's be real, you never would have made it this far without me cleaning up your messes growing up. Consider this my long overdue compensation. Compensation, like years of love and trust were a paycheck she'd been waiting to cash. I whispered, "We're twins, Ava. Blood." "Yeah," she said, softly, almost tender, "and blood looks out for itself first. Get over it, Alia. Start something new. Maybe something smaller this time. Something you can actually handle." The line went dead. I dropped the phone, slid down the wall, and sobbed until my throat was raw. The injustice wasn't just financial anymore, it was soul deep. She'd taken my dream, my dignity, and now she's rewriting history with me as the incompetent footnote. Resentment coiled tighter in my gut, hot and poisonous. Part of me still ached for the sister I thought I had, the one who'd held my hand at our dad's funeral. But that girl was gone, replaced by this entitled stranger wearing my face. I barely slept. Every notification ping made my heart lurch, expecting another blow. The wound wasn't healing, it was festering, spreading, changing me from the inside. And somewhere in that darkness, the anger started shifting into something colder, sharper. The breaking point was coming. I could feel it. I thought I'd already hit the lowest point. I was wrong. For weeks, I drifted through life like a ghost. I took whatever freelance coding gigs I could find. Bug fixes for startups, small apps for local shops. The pay barely covered rent and ramen, but it kept the lights on. Every time I opened my laptop, though, the screen felt like a mockery. I used to build something that mattered. Now I was patching other people's half-baked ideas for pennies. The worst part? Running into old industry contacts. At a tech meetup I stupidly attended, hoping to network, people I'd once pitched to avoided eye contact. Whispers floated behind me. "That's Alia, yeah, the one whose twin took everything." My cheeks burned. My chest tightened so hard I had to step outside for air, hands shaking as I gripped the railing. I felt small, insignificant, disposable. Ava, meanwhile, was soaring. EcoForge's stock was climbing under her leadership. Interviews, podcasts, magazine features, she was everywhere, painted as the brilliant savior who'd stepped in to rescue a floundering company. Every headline felt like a fresh cut. Then she went for the kill shot. One gray morning, a process server showed up at my apartment door. He handed me an envelope with a polite nod and left before I could even speak. Inside, court papers. Ava was suing me for defamation and intentional interference with business. Her claim? That I'd been spreading malicious falsehoods about the share transfer, damaging her reputation and EcoForge's valuation. She wanted damages, restraining orders, a public retraction. My stomach dropped so fast, I thought I'd be sick right there in the hallway. I had nothing left to give, no money for lawyers, no energy for a fight. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a gag order wrapped in legal tape, a way to bury me forever. I texted her immediately. No answer. Called, straight to voicemail. Finally, 2 days later, she agreed to meet, to talk like adults. We picked a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with dim lighting and overpriced lattes. I got there early, ordered nothing, and sat twisting a napkin into shreds. When she walked in, heads turned. She looked flawless. Tailored blazer, hair sleek, that confident stride I used to envy in our teens. She slid into the booth across from me, ordered an oat milk cappuccino, and smiled like we were catching up over brunch. "Ava," I started, voice already trembling. "A lawsuit? Seriously? You know what you did." She tilted her head, eyes wide with fake innocence. "Alia, I'm trying to protect what we built. You've been telling people I stole from you. That's not okay." "We?" The words slipped out sharper than I meant. "There is no we. You forged my name. You took everything." She leaned back, crossing her arms. A small laugh escaped, soft, but it sliced right through me. You keep saying forged, but those documents have your signature, your handwriting. We're identical twins, remember? Mistakes happen. She paused, sipping her drink as it arrived. Honestly, I feel bad for you. You're struggling, and it's turning into resentment. It's sad. Sad. My throat closed up, hands balled into fists under the table, nails digging crescents into my palms. I'm not resentful. I'm telling the truth. You stole my company. Her smile faded into something colder. Your company? Let's be real. You were drowning. Ideas are cute, but execution is everything. I executed. I carried us. And now you're jealous because I'm succeeding where you failed. She leaned forward, voice dropping. Look at you, freelancing scraps, living in that shoebox. You look tired, pathetic even. Pathetic. The word landed like a slap across the face. Heat rushed to my cheeks, my vision blurred with instant tears, but I blinked hard, refusing to let them fall in front of her. Inside, something cracked wide open. Every doubt I'd carried, every night I'd blamed myself for trusting her, it all roared to the surface. But beneath the pain, something new stirred, hot, focused. She slid a document across the table, a prepared statement retracting my claims, plus a non-disparagement agreement. Sign this, she said softly, almost kindly. Drop the drama. I'll call off the lawyers. We can move on. Family forgives, right? My hand hovered over the pen she offered. For a split second, I imagined signing, just ending the nightmare. But then I saw her eyes, that gleam of triumph. She wasn't offering peace, she was demanding surrender. I pulled my hand back, stood up so fast the chair scraped loud against the floor. No, I said, voice low but steady for the first time in months. You don't get to rewrite this. You don't get to win. Her eyebrows shot up, genuine surprise flickering across her face. Good. I walked out without looking back. The cold air hit my wet cheeks as I stepped onto the sidewalk, but I didn't wipe the tears away. My heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with something fiercer. The humiliation still burned, but it was fuel now. That night, alone in my tiny apartment, I hit true rock bottom. I curled on the floor, sobs shaking my whole body, every betrayal replaying in vivid color. I cried for the sister I thought I had, for the dream she murdered, for the version of me that had believed blood was thicker than ambition. But when the tears finally slowed, I stayed on that cold floor a little longer, and in the silence, my inner voice shifted. No more, why me? No more, how could she? Just one clear, quiet thought. She thinks I'm broken. She thinks I'm done. She's wrong. I'm going to make her pay. Not with screams or begging, but with something she'll never see coming. The decision was made. No turning back. And whatever came next, it started now. After that cafe showdown, I disappeared. Not dramatically, no tearful goodbye posts or dramatic exits. I just vanished from Ava's world. I stopped answering mutual friends' check-in texts, skipped family group chats, took a cash-only job as a barista in a quiet neighborhood cafe far from downtown. To anyone looking, I was the broken twin licking her wounds, fading into obscurity. Exactly what she expected. But inside my tiny studio apartment, something ferocious was waking up. The place was a dump, peeling paint, leaky faucet, single window overlooking a brick wall. But it became my fortress. I cleared the living room completely. No couch, no TV, just a cheap desk, a secondhand laptop, and walls that slowly filled with printouts. Timelines of every document Ava had touched, bank statements I'd salvaged before accounts froze, photos of signatures, hers and mine, side by side, red string connecting dates like some detective movie. Except this wasn't fiction. My hands didn't shake anymore when I pinned new evidence up. They were steady, purposeful. Every night after my shift, I transformed. The exhausted barista in the stained apron disappeared, and the strategist emerged. I devoured everything I could on corporate fraud, forensic accounting, trust law, online courses at 2 a.m., headphones in so the neighbors wouldn't hear, library books stacked like armor. I started noticing patterns I'd missed before, how Ava had slowly moved small amounts first, testing the waters, how she'd used our identical handwriting to practice for months. The realization didn't crush me anymore. It fueled me. At the cafe, I befriended an older regular named Tom, a retired forensic accountant who came in every morning for a black coffee and the newspaper. I started small, casual questions about a friend's situation, hypotheticals. What if someone forged a twin's signature on a trust? How would you even prove it? He'd chuckle, thinking I was curious about some TV show, and drop gold: digital metadata, handwriting pressure analysis, witness timelines. I'd nod gratefully, memorize every word, and go home to apply it. Ava, of course, barely noticed I was gone. Why would she? She'd won. At our cousin's wedding, a few months later, the one social event I couldn't dodge, she spotted me across the room and made a beeline. She looked radiant, designer dress, hair perfect, surrounded by people congratulating her on EcoForge's latest funding round. I was in a simple black dress I'd bought secondhand, hair tied back, no makeup. She air-kissed near my cheek, perfume overwhelming. "Alia," she said loudly enough for others to hear, "you look tired. Still pulling espresso shots?" Her smile was all teeth, eyes scanning me like I was a disappointing before picture. I met her gaze and smiled back, small, calm. "Yeah, keeps me busy." She laughed, patting my arm like I was a child. "Good for you. Starting small is smart." The condescension dripped. A few relatives nearby chuckled awkwardly. Inside, rage flared hot, but I let it burn quietly. Outer calm, inner inferno. She bought the act completely, squeezed my shoulder, and floated away to more important conversations. Perfect. I started observing her more closely after that. Not stalking, strategic distance. I'd take different routes home if I knew she had meetings downtown, sit in corner booths at events she attended, blending into the background. I watched who she networked with, who she dismissed, how she wielded charm like a weapon. One evening, from across the street, I saw her at a rooftop gala, laughing with investors who used to call me visionary. She tossed her hair, gestured grandly, owning the room. My chest tightened for a moment, old grief flaring, but I breathed through it, took notes on my phone, names, dates, connections. I hired a private investigator with the last of my savings, a quiet woman named Reyes who didn't ask too many questions. First report came back a week later, offshore accounts in Ava's name, transfers timed perfectly with my absent signatures, emails where she joked to a shady lawyer about twin privileges. Every new piece felt like armor plating over the scars. Physically, I changed too. The sleepless nights turned into disciplined ones, early morning runs until my lungs burned, weights in the corner of my studio until my arms shook, not for vanity, for strength. Mirrors started showing someone new, shoulders squared, eyes sharper, jaw set, no longer her soft reflection. The contrast was everything. Outwardly, I was the defeated sister, quiet, withdrawn, moving on. Inwardly, I was becoming something she'd never expect: precise, patient, unstoppable. I journaled at night, pen digging hard into paper. She thinks I'm pathetic. She thinks I'm gone. She's counting on me staying broken. Let her. Because every day I stayed silent, I grew stronger. Every smirk she threw my way added kindling to the fire. And that fire wasn't wild anymore. It was controlled, focused. The plan didn't arrive in a lightning bolt moment. It built slowly, piece by piece, like code compiling line by line in the dark. I knew screaming publicly wouldn't work. Ava had already painted me as the unstable, jealous twin. No one would believe me without proof they couldn't ignore. So I went quiet, deadly quiet, and I started planting seeds that would grow into something she couldn't uproot. The first move was legal, but invisible. I opened a new email account under a fake name, a generic consulting alias with no ties to me. From there, I sent anonymous tips to the SEC's online whistleblower portal. Not wild accusations, just calm, factual summaries. Unusual share transfers at EcoForge, potential signature irregularities, offshore entities linked to an executive. I attached scanned snippets, carefully redacted copies of documents I'd kept from the early days, timestamps that didn't match my travel records, nothing traceable. My heart hammered every time I hit send, fingers hovering over the trackpad, but I forced myself to breathe slow. This wasn't rage, this was precision. Next came the social cracks. I created a burner profile on LinkedIn, posed as a freelance business journalist researching women-led tech turnarounds. I reached out to people Ava had worked with before EcoForge, old college acquaintances, former colleagues from her short-lived jobs. Innocent questions. I'm writing about strong female leadership. Any stories about Ava you'd share off record? People love to talk, especially when they feel slighted. One by one, messages came back. A classmate remembered Ava borrowing group project work and taking sole credit. A past boss mentioned expense reports that never quite added up. And the goldmine, a former partner from a failed startup who said, "She once signed my name on a vendor contract while I was out of town, claimed it was an emergency. We look nothing alike, but she laughed it off as no big deal." I saved every screenshot. My pulse raced reading them, but I stayed silent, just collected. The tension was addictive. Every night I'd check for new replies, stomach twisting with anticipation. One wrong click, one slip in wording, and she'd trace it back. But I was careful, obsessively careful. Financially, I started small but sharp. Using public records, I filed quiet challenges to the trust amendments in probate court, low-cost motions that didn't need a big lawyer, just paperwork and patience. They forced Ava's legal team to respond, to produce originals, to justify dates. Each filing cost her time and money. I watched her social media for signs of stress. No direct complaints, of course, but fewer posts, shorter captions. Good. Then came the first hidden win. 3 months after my SEC tips, a clerk's office flagged discrepancies in one of the transfer affidavits. Not huge, just a note in the file requesting additional verification. But it triggered an automatic internal review at EcoForge's registrar. I found out through a contact I'd quietly reconnected with on the old team, someone who still felt guilty about jumping ship. On anonymous chat, they whispered, "Something's up with the share history. Auditors are coming in next week." I read that message in my studio at 1 a.m. sitting cross-legged on the floor, laptop glow the only light. My hands didn't shake this time. A slow smile spread across my face, the kind I hadn't felt in almost a year. It wasn't victory yet, but it was proof. The seeds were sprouting. Ava still had no idea I was behind any of it. We ran into each other at a grocery store downtown. Pure chance. I was in sweats, hair in a messy bun, basket with cheap pasta and canned sauce. She was in yoga gear, designer bag slung over her shoulder, cart full of organic everything. She spotted me first. "Aaliyah," she said, voice dripping with pity. "Still keeping it simple, I see." I looked up, met her eyes, and gave a small nod. "Yeah, low stress." She laughed, light, superior. Smart, not everyone's cut out for the big leagues. She reached out like she might pat my arm again, then thought better of it. "Take care of yourself, okay?" I smiled, calm, empty. "You too, Ava." She walked away without a second glance, confident the broken twin was staying broken. Inside, fire roared. She thought she'd buried me, but I wasn't buried. I was underground, growing roots in every direction, wrapping slowly around her perfect world. And the best part? She couldn't feel them yet. But soon, the ground would start to shift beneath her feet. And when it did, she'd finally understand what it feels like to lose everything, one careful seed at a time. At first, the changes were subtle. So subtle that anyone else might have missed them, but I didn't. I'd built a quiet routine of monitoring. Nothing obsessive, just daily checks. EcoForge's public filings, Ava's social media, industry newsletters, Glassdoor reviews from anonymous employees, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the perfect picture she'd painted started to smudge. It began with the auditors. That small flag from the registrar's office, the one I'd triggered months earlier, had quietly snowballed. A routine compliance check turned into a full internal audit. I learned this not from headlines, but from a late-night encrypted message from my old contact inside the company. Auditors are here all week, asking a lot about the share transfer history. Ava's been in closed-door meetings nonstop. My heart raced reading it, but I didn't celebrate. Not yet. I just replied with a simple, "Thanks for the heads up," and closed the app. Ava's online presence shifted first. The daily posts, polished photos, motivational quotes overlaid on sunrises, announcements of new partnerships slowed to a trickle. When they did appear, the tone felt forced. A photo of her at her desk, smiling tightly, grateful for the team carrying us through a busy season, stronger together. The comments were still positive, but fewer. Some people asked questions. "Everything okay? Been quiet lately." She never replied. Then the paranoia started showing. My PI, Reyes, sent me audio from a discreet bug placed in Ava's trash pickup. Legal gray area, but worth it. In one clip, Ava's voice was sharp, edged with something new: fear. "Who leaked the audit to the board? Find out. Someone's talking." A pause. Slam of a drawer. "If it's her, if it's Alya, I swear." She didn't finish the sentence, but the venom was clear. My name on her lips after months of silence sent a chill down my spine, followed immediately by a rush of satisfaction. She was thinking about me. Finally. Her cruelty towards others ramped up too. Glassdoor lit up with new reviews. Toxic leadership from the top. CEO snaps at minor mistakes, blames staff for everything. One anonymous post read, "She fired 3 people last week for disloyalty after they were questioned by auditors. Morale is in the toilet." I read them on my phone during a slow shift at the cafe, steam from the espresso machine fogging the screen. My hands stayed steady as I poured milk, but inside, a dark thrill. She was unraveling the team I'd built, pushing away the very people keeping her afloat. She reached out to me once, out of the blue. A text at 11:47 p.m. "We need to talk. Call me." I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering. Every instinct screamed trap. Maybe she'd recorded calls, gathered evidence of harassment to bolster her lawsuit. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another text. "I know you're awake. This isn't a game, Alya." I turned the phone face down and went to bed. Slept better than I had in months. The next week, things escalated. A major investor quietly pulled out of a funding round extension. No public announcement, just a line in a financial newsletter about reassessing commitments due to governance concerns. EcoForge's stock dipped 8% in a single day. Ava posted a damage control video. Her in the office, voice calm but eyes tired. Just normal market fluctuations were stronger than ever. But her hands gripped the desk a little too tight. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Reyes captured more, Ava arguing with her boyfriend over speakerphone. "I can't sleep. Someone's doing this on purpose, watching me, waiting for me to slip." He tried to soothe her, but she snapped back. "You don't get it. Everything I worked for—" A choked sound. Was that crying? I replayed it twice, heart pounding. Not out of pity, out of confirmation. The pressure was working. I stayed completely silent. No gloating, no contact, no trace. Outwardly, I was still the quiet barista, smiling at customers, wiping counters, counting tips at the end of shifts. Inside, I was ice. Every new crack in her world felt like vindication for every tear I'd shed on that apartment floor. The stakes were rising fast now. If she figured out it was me, even suspected strongly enough to prove harassment, her lawsuit could bury me. But the momentum was mine. Regulators were circling, reporters were starting to sniff, former allies were distancing themselves. And Ava, she was starting to feel what I'd felt for months, the slow, suffocating realization that control was slipping away. She just didn't know how far it had already slipped, or how much farther it was going to go. The trap wasn't just set anymore, it was closing, one careful turn at a time. The noose wasn't visible yet, but I could feel it pulling tighter every day. By now, multiple systems were closing in on Ava at once, each one triggered by the quiet seeds I'd planted months earlier. It wasn't chaos, it was orchestration. The SEC had escalated their inquiry into a formal investigation. A letter arrived at EcoForge's headquarters demanding full records of the share transfers, trust amendments, and all related communications going back 3 years. Reyes forwarded me a photo of the envelope, official seal, return address from the Enforcement Division. My pulse quickened reading it, but I stayed calm. This was expected, planned. At the same time, my anonymous tips to financial reporters started bearing fruit. A well-known tech finance blog published a short piece titled, "Questions Swirl Around EcoForge Ownership Change." No accusations yet, just sources familiar with the matter raising eyebrows about the speed of the transfer and the identical twin dynamic. The comments section exploded. People love a scandal, especially when it involves family betrayal. Ava's PR team scrubbed some mentions, but screenshots live forever. Then the IRS joined the party. One of the offshore entities I'd flagged showed unusual deposits timed perfectly with the share sale profits. An automatic cross-check triggered an audit notice for both the entity and Ava personally. Reyes intercepted a frantic email from Ava's accountant. "We need to explain these flows, now." I read it twice, slowly, letting the words sink in. She was scrambling. Inside EcoForge, the board was fracturing. 2 directors, ones I'd originally brought on years ago, started asking uncomfortable questions in meetings. Why wasn't the full board notified of the controlling stake change? Where are the original signed documents? Ava's responses grew shorter, sharper. My old contact messaged me late one night. She lost it today, yelled at the chairman in front of everyone, called him disloyal. He walked out. Staff turnover hit record highs. Key developers quit without notice. Clients delayed renewals, citing uncertainty. Ava's paranoia went into overdrive. Reyes sent me clips from her home security feed. Nothing invasive, just external cameras she'd installed herself after feeling watched. Ava pacing her balcony at 3 a.m., phone to her ear. "Hire someone better. I don't care what it costs. Find out who's feeding the SEC." Another night, she threw her phone across the room after a call. The crash echoed. Her boyfriend moved out temporarily, for space, he told friends. Isolation was setting in. She tried tracing it back to me once more. An email from a private investigator she'd hired. Routine background check on my recent activity. Job at the cafe, new address. No red flags. The report concluded, subject appears disengaged from prior business interests. No evidence of involvement in current inquiries. I smiled, reading the forwarded copy. Good. Let her believe I was still broken. Nights in my studio, I allowed myself moments to reflect. I'd spread new printouts across the floor, updated timelines now branching like a web. Every new development pinned in red. I sat cross-legged in the center, tracing the lines with my finger. The pain still lived in my chest. Memories of her laugh at the relaunch party, the word pathetic in that cafe, the way she'd rewritten our entire history. But the pain wasn't crippling anymore. It was clarifying. Every tear I'd cried had watered these roots. I whispered to the empty room sometimes, voice low. You thought you could take everything and walk away clean. You thought I'd stay quiet forever. The emotional payoff was starting to brew, slow, warm, undeniable. Not full revenge yet, but the horizon was glowing with it. Ava's world was shrinking fast. Investors ghosting calls, media requests she couldn't spin, sleep lost to nightmares of exposure. She still posted the occasional confident update, photos from the office, forced smiles, but the cracks were visible now even to strangers. Comments shifted. Hope the rumors aren't true. What's really going on with the ownership? The annual investor summit was 6 weeks away, EcoForge's biggest event, where Ava planned to announce a major acquisition. She'd been hyping it for months. Every major stakeholder would be there, reporters, analysts, the board. That stage was going to be ground zero. Everything I'd built in silence was converging toward that one moment. Her empire wasn't just wobbling anymore, it was teetering on the edge, and I was the invisible hand about to push. One more turn of the vice, then the whole thing would come crashing down. I could almost hear it already. It started with a single article. I was wiping down the espresso machine at the cafe, mid-morning lull, when my burner phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A Google alert I'd set months ago. Eco-forged twin controversy. My hands froze on the rag. I slipped into the back room, heart already pounding, and opened the link. The headline hit like a thunderclap. Twin sisters at center of Eco-forge ownership battle. Forgery allegations surface. It was from a major tech outlet, reputable, widely read. The piece laid it out plainly. Questions about the sudden transfer of controlling shares from me to Ava, discrepancies in signatures, anonymous sources confirming an ongoing SEC probe. There were side-by-side photos, me from an old company bio, smiling and confident, Ava at a recent event, mid-laugh. The caption read, "Once inseparable twins, now divided by millions." Within hours, it was everywhere. Other outlets picked it up. CNBC ran a segment. Twitter, now X, exploded with threads dissecting every public record. Hashtag twin fraud trended in the US by noon. Old photos of us as kids resurfaced, next to Ava's smug relaunch posts. Comments poured in. How do you steal from your own twin? This is next-level evil. Hope the victim gets justice. Ava's carefully curated image cracked wide open. Reyes sent me real-time updates. Ava left the office early that day. Paparazzi already camped outside. Grainy photos showed her rushing to her car, sunglasses on, head ducked, no smile. Reporters shouted questions. Did you forge your sister's signature? Are you cooperating with the SEC? She didn't answer, just sped away. Her social media went silent. No damage control post, no statement. For someone who'd lived online, bragging about every win, the quiet was deafening. Inside EcoForge, panic set in. The board called an emergency meeting. My old contact messaged me screenshots. Ava at the head of the table, face pale, voice sharp. "This is a smear campaign. We focus on the acquisition." But two directors pushed back, demanded full transparency and an independent forensic review of the share transfer. One even suggested suspending Ava pending investigation. She shut it down, but the vote was close, too close. Clients started pulling out. A major enterprise contract worth 8 figures was put on indefinite hold, citing reputational risk. Stock dropped 22% in a single session. Analysts downgraded, headlines shifted. EcoForge in freefall amid fraud claims. Ava lost control in real time. Reyes captured audio from her lost that night. Glass breaking, her voice raw, screaming into the phone at her lawyer. "Fix this! Pay someone! Threaten someone! I don't care! I'm not going down for this!" A pause, then quieter, almost broken. "She's doing this. I know it's her. After everything I did for us." The call ended with a sob. I listened to it once, only once. No satisfaction in the tears, just confirmation. The power had shifted. She tried reaching me one last time, a voicemail at 2:14 a.m. "Aaliyah, if you're behind this, please, we're sisters. Talk to me. We can figure it out. I'll make it right." Her voice cracked on the last word, desperate, small. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. The next morning, the board made it official. Ava was placed on indefinite leave to allow for uninterrupted investigations. An interim CEO, someone neutral, was appointed. Her office was cleared out by security. Photos leaked. Ava carrying a single box to her car, alone while staff watched from windows. The woman who'd laughed at me in that cafe, who'd called me pathetic, who danced on my grave, was now the one being buried. Public opinion had fully turned. Old friends unfollowed her in mass. Comments on her last post, months old now, filled with fire emojis and "karma's real." Even neutral industry voices weighed in. Leadership built on deception doesn't last. I stayed completely composed, still pouring coffee, still smiling at customers, still silent. But inside, anticipation burned white hot. Everything I'd built in the dark was now in the light. And the final strike, the one that would end it all, was already in motion. Ava's world wasn't just fractured, it was shattering, piece by carefully placed piece. And the sound of it falling? It was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the atmosphere. Sterile fluorescent lights, wooden benches that creaked under every shift, the low hum of anticipation from the gallery. Reporters in the back rows, notebooks open. Former EcoForge employees scattered throughout, some avoiding eye contact with Ava. And there she was, at the defendant's table. My twin, in a navy suit that used to be my favorite color, hair pulled back severely, face pale but composed. She didn't look at me when I walked in. I took the stand on the third day of the civil trial, my lawsuit against her for fraud, forgery, breach of fiduciary duty, and theft of corporate opportunity. The criminal charges would come later. This was about getting my company back first. My lawyer, a sharp woman I'd hired with a contingency deal and every favor I could call in, started slow. She walked me through the timeline, the early days of EcoForge, my sole ownership, the trust I'd set up, the power I'd given Ava. Then the documents, projected large on the courtroom screen, my signatures side by side with known forgeries. Expert testimony already in evidence, pressure analysis, ink aging, digital metadata showing files created on Ava's laptop while I was out of state. I kept my voice steady as I spoke. I trusted her because she was my sister, my twin. I never imagined she'd use that against me. Ava's lawyer objected, relevance, but the judge overruled. The gallery murmured. Then came the emails. One after another, pulled from Ava's own accounts via subpoena. To her shady lawyer, twin privileges make this easy, signatures are identical, just backdate. To an investor, the founder's out, I'm streamlining. And the worst one, to a friend, 2 days after the transfer, finally got what I deserved. She'll cry for a week, then start some Etsy shop or something, LOL. The courtroom went dead silent as it was read aloud. I watched Ava's face as each message flashed on screen. The mask slipped bit by bit. First the tight jaw, then the flushed cheeks, then the wide eyes darting to her lawyer, who wouldn't meet her gaze. When my lawyer played the audio, the one Reyes had captured of Ava bragging about carrying me, laughing about how I'd never prove it, Ava's hands started shaking on the table, visibly. The jury noticed. Cross-examination was brutal. Her lawyer tried to paint me as bitter, unstable, the failed founder lashing out. Isn't it true you were overwhelmed running the company? Didn't you beg my client for help? Are you sure you didn't sign these documents and forget? I stayed calm, looked directly at the jury. I built EcoForge from nothing. I remember every document I signed, and I remember who I trusted with my life's work. Then the witnesses, former employees, the investor who'd bought shares cheap and now regretted it, even the ex-boyfriend, subpoenaed and uncomfortable, confirming Ava had joked about the twin trick over dinner once. With each testimony, Ava shrank smaller in her seat. The climax came on the final day. My lawyer called a forensic handwriting expert, one of the best in the country. She laid out blub-ups, microscopic comparisons of letter loops, pen pressure, tremor patterns, concluded unequivocally the contested signatures were not written by the plaintiff. They matched the defendant's natural hand, with intentional disguise attempts. Then the killer evidence, an email chain we'd recovered from a deleted folder. Ava instructing her assistant, scan Aaliyah's old contracts for signature samples. I need practice. Timestamped 3 months before the forgeries. The assistant, tearful on the stand, confirmed it. That was when Ava broke. She leaned over to her lawyer, whispering frantically. He shook his head. She grabbed his arm harder. Finally, he stood. "Your Honor, may we approach?" Sidebar. 10 agonizing minutes. When they returned, her lawyer looked defeated. The defense wishes to concede liability on all counts. We request a brief recess to discuss settlement terms. The judge granted it, but Ava couldn't wait. She stood up, right there in open court, face flushed crimson, eyes wild. "This is insane," she shouted, voice cracking. "She's lying. All of you are lying. I built that company as much as she did. I deserved it." The gallery gasped. The judge banged the gavel. "Miss Ava, sit down." "No!" Tears streamed down her face now. "You don't understand. She was gonna run it into the ground. I saved it. I'm the one who—" Her lawyer pulled her down, hissing. She fought him for a second, then collapsed into her chair, sobbing openly, shoulders shaking, makeup running. The entitled, arrogant sister I'd known, gone, replaced by someone small, furious, humiliated, and everyone saw it. The power dynamic didn't just reverse, it obliterated. Settlement came fast after that. Full restitution of shares, return of all profits she'd taken, damages triple what I'd asked for. EcoForge, mine again, free and clear. Ava barred from any involvement ever. As the judge read the terms, I felt it hit me. Not triumph at first, but release. A weight lifting off my chest I'd carried for a year. My throat tightened, eyes burned, but I didn't cry here. I looked at Ava one last time. She was staring at the table, defeated. When she finally glanced up, our eyes met. Same hazel, same face, but hers was shattered. Mine wasn't. The revenge wasn't in her tears or her screams. It was in that moment, knowing she finally understood what powerless felt like, what being disposable felt like, what losing everything to someone you underestimated felt like. It was justified, earned, complete. And as I walked out of that courtroom into the flashing cameras, head high for the first time in forever, I could finally breathe again. The nightmare was over, but the new chapter, it was just beginning. The dust settled slower than I thought it would. Court was over. The judgment was final. EcoForge was mine again. Shares restored, profits clawed back, Ava's name erased from every board, every contract, every line of code. Reporters camped outside my new office for weeks, but I kept statements short. I'm just grateful to focus on the future. The headlines moved on eventually. Scandals always do. Ava's fall was total. Criminal charges followed the civil win. Wire fraud, forgery, securities violations. She took a plea to avoid a trial that would have dragged our childhood photos across front pages again. 18 months in federal prison, 5 years probation, full restitution. Her condo sold at auction, designer clothes donated or discarded. The friends who'd toasted her at that relaunch party? Gone. Social media accounts deleted or memorialized by strangers dissecting her downfall. Last I heard, she was living in a small apartment upstate, working a low-level admin job under supervision. No more spotlights, no more power. She tried to reach me once more. A letter, forwarded by my lawyer. Handwritten, shaky penmanship I didn't recognize at first. Alia, I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, for all of it. I told myself I deserved more, that you'd be fine without it. I was wrong. I hate who I became. If you ever want to talk, I'll understand if you don't. Ava. I read it twice, sat with it for days. I didn't write back. Some wounds don't need another conversation. They just need time and distance to scar over. EcoForge didn't just survive, it grew. I brought back some of the original team who'd been forced out. We refocused on the mission I'd started with, sustainable tech that actually helped people. Revenue climbed higher than ever, but this time it felt different, earned, clean. Investors called me resilient. Employees called me fair. I started a small foundation with a portion of the damages, scholarships for women in tech from broken homes. Every acceptance letter I signed felt like reclaiming a piece of the dream Ava had tried to kill. My own growth was quieter. Therapy helped, long runs at dawn helped more. I cut ties with the family members who'd stayed silent during the betrayal, our parents included. Blood isn't always thicker. Sometimes it's just thicker with excuses. I forgave myself first. for trusting too much, for not seeing the signs, for crumbling when it happened. Forgiveness didn't erase the pain, it just stopped letting the pain drive. Some nights I still dream about her, that old laugh from childhood echoing down hallways. I wake up with my chest tight, but the feeling fades faster now. The scars are there, raised and permanent, but they don't hurt when I touch them anymore. I think about karma a lot, not in a vengeful way, more like balance. Ava thought family was something she could exploit and discard. She learned, too late, that consequences don't care about blood. I learned that self-worth isn't tied to what others take from you. It's what you rebuild when they're gone. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet courtroom moment when the person who called you pathetic finally runs out of lies. Sometimes it's walking back into the office you built and realizing it's bigger now because you refused to stay broken. And sometimes it's just waking up one morning and realizing you're not angry anymore. You're free. So if you're watching this and you've been betrayed by family, by a partner, by someone who was supposed to protect you, hear me. They can take your money, your company, your trust, but they can't take what you decide to become afterward. The betrayed don't stay victims forever. We rise, we rebuild, and when we do, we rise sharper than before, because nothing teaches resilience like surviving the people who were supposed to love you most. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helps even one of you feel less alone, then every tear, every sleepless night, every silent step in the dark was worth it. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, underestimate someone at your own risk, especially the quiet ones. They're usually the ones writing the ending.